Among HR people, of course, he's very well known. But to tell you a little bit more about him, after a successful stint as a CEO of Gallup India, partner engagement and culture at Avon Hewitt and Group CHRO of a large conglomerate, Prashant has set up the Other2 Thirds Consulting LLP to elevate human life and impact revenue growth, profit improvement, valuation enhancement through employee engagement and well-being. He is an engineering graduate with his post-graduation from IIM Ahmedabad and has had a very interesting journey of driving strategy and then HR and today with that kind of insight that he brings, I think he has a very interesting case study to share with us that produced a very significant impact, and he still remains one of the darling consultants of a very big business house because of the kind of work they did. So I will leave there and invite Prashant to please come and take charge. Please welcome Prashant as he joins here.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So it's lovely to be talking to an august gathering of senior professionals, and let's make it more of a discussion than a presentation. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So this case study is little dated, but it builds on what my earlier speaker said, is the quant HR. You've got to quantify, and you've got to quantify not only HR, but the impact of HR on business, and that's where the magic happens. And that's where this whole debate of whether one should get HR should get a seat in the board or in transformation, etc., is not even a discussion. So this case study is of Piramal Healthcare when Piramal Healthcare was with Mr. Ajay Piramal. And we'll go through it and see how we started, what we did, and what were the outcomes. It was amongst the top 5 pharmaceutical companies in India in any case, leading company. The objective for the past 2 years was to move one notch higher. And you know how difficult it is, all of you have done this, to move one notch higher when you are amongst the top 5, because everyone is equally good, right? Number 1 cannot be confident of staying in number 1, and everyone is trying really hard to stay where they are, and very difficult to displace anyone. Now, unlike if you are 20th in the industry, in 1 year you can move to 16th, right? But if you are a startup, in 1 year from nowhere you can move to top 50 or top 20, etc., etc. That's the base effect. But being in top 5, the base effect advantage is gone. It's all about then what do you do. So with that kind of a situation, they were trying various things: business transformation, process improvement, doing something for the doctors, influencing the stockists, improving the supply chain, etc., etc. But it's always good to identify what are the 3 things that will impact the revenue or the bottom line or the valuation, whatever you're pursuing, and focus on those 3 things rather than try to do 10 things and assume that something is going to work. But with all the changes that were brought in, the rate of prescription was very marginally increasing, nothing drastic compared to other pharmaceutical companies in the peer group. new formulation target which was achieved at 30%, not because the target, not because they were not doing enough work, but because they felt that the target was quite steep. So, they were producing new formulations which were in line with the competition, but the exponentially higher target achievement on new formulations that they had set was seemingly difficult, but they were still trying to pursue. So, we spoke about this, the transformation was in progress, a lot of changes were being done, but the objective was not achieved. So, what was the challenge? So, if you've gotten the process right, the investment right and all of that, then was a challenge people. And then we were brought in, we measured, I used to be with Gallup India those days, and we measured both the doctor's engagement and the employee engagement, including the sales team engagement, and we plotted 48 SBUs, therapeutic groups into geographies, formed the SBUs. So, they had 12 therapeutic groups those days and 4 geographies. So, 48 SBUs were plotted, and with sales team engagement on x axis and the doctor's engagement on y axis, and we got something like this, right. So, we had in the top quadrant 130% of the targets achieved, and in the bottom quadrant only 70% of the targets were achieved, right. So, if we were to move these SBUs to this quadrant, an 85% upside was possible. Where doctors' engagement was high and sales team was not that engaged, they were achieving 100% of the target, right. So, they were achieving what they were given to, but perhaps the discretionary effort was missing, which could have taken them to 130%. Also, the risk that one was running was that these are the teams who are doing their best because they are compulsive performers most probably, and with time, if they continue to be disengaged, they could move out of the organization, which will then bring these down to the last quadrant. Where employees were engaged, but they were not engaging the doctors, I call it country club. So, employees are feeling happy about everything, they are enjoying life, but they are no different. Sorry, I think I did something wrong, press some wrong button. But there was not much difference between the performance with the bottom quadrant, because they were not doing the right things for the doctors. So, then the chairman said, you know what, how fast can you move these dots? I said it would take about 4 quarters to see the business impact. He says, you no longer need to show me business impact, just show me how doctors' engagement, sales team engagement can move, and how much time you need for that. I can't wait for 4 quarters, right. That reminded me of a story. I'll take maybe 2 minutes or even half a minute to tell you another story. I was having a breakfast session with Pawan Agrawal, who was the CEO of IBM Daksh. Those days I think, it was IBM Daksh by then. So, I was telling him what he needs to do over next 2 years to get his engagement and productivity right, and he heard me for 40 minutes and he said, Prashant, you know what, I believe our focus is short term, and you can tell us something that we can do in the medium term, and in the long term all of us are dead. And as I was about to speak, he said, wait, I haven't finished. My definition of short term is 3 months. My definition of medium terms is 6 months. Anything that you're going to do post 6 months or is going to deliver results post 6 months, please don't talk about it. I also happened to meet Chidambaram with my global CEO of Gallup India, and they were those days doing some citizen engagement work, and he said in his pitch to Chidambaram that, no, I am committed to do this, and my organization is committed to do this for 100 years. So, you will have longitudinal data of citizen engagement for 100 years. And Chidambaram heard him for 15 minutes and then said, hey, it's great that you guys are committed for 100 years, but what we need is only 5 years. So, recalling these two conversations, I was quick to say that, you know, sir, we can do it in 2 quarters, 6 months. No, so, I met the Pawan Agrawal's deadline of short and medium term and not going into long term when all of us are dead. And we started work. So, let us go through what were the issues. Why were the formulation targets not met? Again, what we figured out is that the team responsible for the formulation targets had the lowest engagement in the whole organization. Now, if you look at the average engagement of the whole organization, you might still feel happy, but the devil lies in the details. So, what were the key issues? So, for doctors, the key issue was that they were not enjoying their conversation with the medical reps, because as some of you are from pharmaceutical industry and the others would have heard about it, most pharmaceutical industries get the medical reps to follow a process, and they just mug up a piece of literature, and where, you know, they are trained to even pause at particular points, and they just give that standard spiel which the doctors are not interested in. And doctors were getting the whole new formulation literature much later than the formulations were in the market, and the spiel was given to them. So, they did not really know what to do. They could not engage in a discussion to figure out what to do. Most of the conferences happened in Bombay. Conventional wisdom was that you get people to Bombay and people feel happy about it, but no longer. Bombay was no great stuff for doctors who could afford to go to London and US by then, and therefore, that was no motivation, and therefore, seats had to be filled, right. Seats had to be filled, and therefore, it was not a question of who is interested and who is meaningful. It was a question of bodies, and the sales guys got some doctors in who did not have much work to do, and therefore, did not have much contribution to the revenue or prescription, and that is where the whole effort was going waste. So, we then spoke to sales team, and we figured out what was going wrong with the sales team, right. Inadequate support from marketing. Marketing was doing a fantastic job. A good friend of mine was heading marketing, and they were producing fantastic literature. They were highly motivating and all of that, but they were little far removed from the field. They were focused on their marketing product and brand, and unaware of what their customers who were doctors are looking for. Right, simple problems most organizations go through. So when we were making this presentation, my young colleague said that, Prashant, isn't this very obvious? Aren't these simple things? I said, when you will run a business, you will realize that the most obvious things are most unobvious, and most leaders end up doing a lot of difficult things when they only need to do some simple things, right? Excessive reporting requirement, we know that and I'm also guilty of that. We collect a lot of information when we don't know what to do with that information. We collect information for the sake of information when there is no action taken on that information. So that is useless effort which prevents the area managers, regional managers to be in the field and support the field staff and understand what their customers need rather than sit in the office and do reporting. New formulation teams, again very simple things. Lack of information flow from doctors. They had no idea what doctors were struggling with, what combinations of molecules doctors needed. They were creating formulations based on their own hypothesis, and there was no cooperation between the R&D team, the marketing team, the sales team and the production team. So the trial runs and all that were delayed because production guys were focused on production, and rightly so, right? They were meeting the demands of today. New formulations was not their KRA, right? Might sound, a lot of you would have already addressed these problems, but might sound familiar to a few. Collaboration and cooperation. So I had done a research in 90s why American companies become very big. Those days I used to work on India entry strategy, and Indian companies don't, right? We figured out 5 things. The second of the 5 things was collaboration, teamwork. We were great individual performers, great individual collaborators, but we couldn't collaborate, we couldn't work as a team. And that's where 1 and 1 only became 2, 1 and 1 couldn't become 11, which is where the US companies scored far higher than us. So same challenge that existed. Now, fine, we found those problems. The chairman said, hey, problem's fine, where's the solution? I said, no, we're there with solutions also. So we said, how do we get the new formulation team up to speed? So we got them, we said, no, it's not about only the sales guys attending the doctors' conferences. The new formulation teams and the marketing teams also have to attend the doctors' conferences. We also said that, how do we solve this conundrum of teamwork? Robert Kaplan has said, what gets measured gets done. We said, everyone, the production, the sales and marketing will have 20% KRA or 20% weightage on the KRA of new product development, right? And that started doing the magic. We said we'll create a steering committee headed by the CEO, and CEO was a great guy who moved from one company to this company, and then this company got acquired, as all of you know, and went back to the parent company from where he had started. But he was a great guy, he understood the whole thing. He formed this steering committee, decided to head. Now this steering committee had the R&D head, the production head, the sales head and the marketing head. And the focus was not on reviewing what has happened, the focus of this monthly meeting was on resolving the issues and enabling the R&D team to perform. We also had market visits not just for the R&D team, but for every team, and not just the head of the function, whether production or marketing, people down the line. So everyone had to go down to the market, accompany the sales guys to a few doctors, listen to what the doctors say, and listen to the challenge that the sales guy is facing in selling, so that everything gets aligned to the doctor's need rather than the functional expertise. And great job. What did we do with the sales team? We let them free. We had extensive education about the diseases, about the formulations, and how these formulations are used. There was no standard script. The sales head felt very challenged, but the CEO was quite convinced, and the chairman was quite convinced, and therefore we let them free. We said no standard spiels. It is a free-flowing discussion, and let him be knowledgeable. Let him, to make sure that he has the right discussion, do the role plays. Do the role plays in the training and get that right. And we also said that why don't we optimize how much information do you need? We said let's review what actions have been taken in last 12 months on all the information that has flown in from the sales team, from the area managers, from the regional managers, and that's where we said we need to curtail the amount of information that has to be reported. We need to automate it, and at a stockist level provide a MIS executive and let him do it. Free up these guys to be in the marketplace, and that's, those MIS executives will cost much less than the hours that these guys spend and the amount of money that you pay them to do the MIS executive's job. So that was one structural change that we brought about. With some of these changes, the sales team were far more engaged and far more responsive. For the country club guys, we said that the focus on performance reviews will be higher, and the performance review will be on their doctors' engagement. How engaged are these doctors? And then what did we do with the doctors? We said, no more Bombay-based doctors' conferences. Take the conferences to where it should be, where the doctors are located. Increase the frequency of conferences. The marketing literature has to be there with them 4 weeks before the launch of a new formulation. Intelligent conversations. Opinion leaders should be met by the marketing folks themselves, as well as the formulation or the R&D folks, and let them create a positive opinion about not only the firm but the formulations, etc. And with all this, then what were the outcomes?